Welcome back to the channel if you've been here before, and hello if you're new. I am pretty excited today because I can finally share with you all the massive project I've been working on for about 6 months at this point, a Gen 1 Pokemon blanket. It's not actually complete yet, so I can't show you the final product. If I waited until it was finished, this video wouldn't be going up for about another 2 years, and waiting 6 months was hard enough. But what I will do to give you a general idea of what the blanket will look like is put a screenshot of the design I came up with up on the screen now. This is something that I've wanted to crochet for myself for quite a while now, since I first started to crochet actually, and I've had vague plans for it in my head for about that long. But initially it wasn't going to be a YouTube project, it was going to stay as a personal project. But the more I considered it, the more I thought, I'm not the only person who loves to crochet, who also loves Pokemon, so let's turn it into a crochet along where anyone can participate. And here we are. Most of my hesitance to include this project on my channel comes from the sheer scale of it. I don't want to leave it unfinished, but at this point I do have several videos edited and ready to go, and I have a couple more that I have filmed, I just haven't edited yet. So if I can stay on top of it, I think we'll be okay. Now to get into the nitty-gritty details. There are going to be 2 introductory videos, including this one. In today's video, we're first going to cover the basic supplies that you'll need, as well as the blanket sizing. We're then going to go into detail of the yarn you'll be using. We'll cover the colours you'll need, their specific abbreviations, and how to read those abbreviations in the written pattern. Because we need so many colours for this project, I want to make this part as clear and easy to understand as possible. And I think the best way to achieve that will be to take the time to go over it in detail. The second introductory video is going to be the one that follows this one. It's going to serve as the tutorial for the entire series. We're going to learn how to do everything from making a slip knot, to single crocheting, to changing colour, to weaving in our ends. The reason I am doing a separate video for the tutorial is that the techniques that we'll be using are going to remain the same throughout the entire series, and it would be a little bit redundant to repeat those things again and again 150 times. So that's why it's getting its own separate video. The only things I won't be covering in the tutorial video are going to be blocking and joining the squares together. I'm not going to be covering those because we have 150 squares to crochet before that, and they will get their own separate video when the time comes some point down the line, whenever that may be. Next, we're going to cover the supplies that you'll need. For each square, you're going to need a 3.5mm hook, a pair of scissors, and a needle. You can also keep a couple of stitch markers on hand, but those aren't strictly necessary. You're also going to need yarn, a lot of yarn. I'm using 8-ply or DK weight yarn, and this in combination with my 3.5mm hook means that my blanket is going to work out to be roughly 170 centimeters across by 255 centimeters long. That is 10 squares across by 15 rows. Keep in mind, my blanket isn't finished yet. This is just an estimate that I've come up with by measuring the crochet squares that I have made. As for the finished size, I didn't bother aiming for a standard blanket size. My biggest concern was having all of my Pokemon fit on my grid that I came up with. I needed to find the right balance so that my smaller Pokemon weren't dwarfed by the background, but at the same time my larger Pokemon weren't appearing as if they barely fit on the square. Given that, I just let the finished blanket be whatever size it was going to be. I didn't really care about that too much. If that's something that does concern you, and the current estimate for the blanket's finished size is something that you would like to either increase or decrease, all of these patterns in this series can be crocheted using a different yarn and hook size. All you'll need to do is, with whatever yarn you choose to use the correct hook size for that yarn, whether that is a lighter weight yarn or a heavier weight yarn. On to the yarn. The particular yarn that I'm going to be using is this one here. It is 4 Seasons Marvel 8-ply, which I purchased from Spotlight, a craft store here in Australia, and I think they're also in New Zealand too. But this is 100% acrylic, and the main reason I chose this particular yarn is they have a very wide colour selection, and we're going to need a lot of colours for this project. However, I do realise that not everyone is going to have access to this particular brand, so for that reason I've broken down all the colours that I'm going to be using into a chart, which I'll put on screen in a moment, in a way that I hope will be easy for you to substitute in whichever brand and colours of that brand that you're going to be using for the ones that I'm using. I want to go over this part thoroughly so there's no confusion, so please bear with me. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them down in the comments below. Currently I have 40 different colours, and this covers all 150 Pokemon squares. Though I haven't crocheted them all yet, I've only made the little Pokemon sprites on my grid. So this is subject to change. As I continue crocheting more and more, I might need to change a color here, I might need to substitute one shade of color for another, or I might remove a color entirely. Like with the blanket sizing, the colors as they are now are my best estimate. And speaking of color changes, future editing me here, as I was just discussing about the colors being subject to change, that has already happened. The bulk of this video was filmed a little while ago, and I have made a few color changes since then. It's not a big deal, it's just in the upcoming explanations for the colors, their abbreviations, and how to read them in the pattern. In some of the examples, I'll be referring to a color that I call blue number 7 electric. This has actually changed to blue number 6. Nothing else changes, the explanation still remains the same. I just wanted you all to know that going forward, what I have named as a blue number 7 in this video is actually now blue number 6. Sorry for that interruption, I just thought it best to clarify that information. Let's get right back to the video. As I mentioned earlier, I've broken down all the colors into an easy to understand chart, and I will put that up on the screen for you now. This chart will also be available on my Instagram feed, that way you can save a copy of it if you would like. The far left column is a sample of the colour to use as a reference. The next colour is the individual abbreviation as it will appear in the written pattern, and I will be going over this in depth in a moment. The third column is the name of each colour as it appears on the Spotlight website. Again, this is just for reference. I'll put a link to the Spotlight website in the description in case anyone would like to check out the colours for themselves. This is not an affiliate link or a sponsored ad or anything of that nature. It's just a resource for anyone who wants to reference the specific colours I'm using and their actual names. The fourth and final column I have left empty. This is for you to use if you want to keep track of what brand and colours of that brand you are using in place of those that I'm using. For example, if I were using a different brand, off the top of my head, let's just say Red Heart Super Saver, and please note I know nothing about this yarn other than I've seen it on TikTok and other social media platforms. I'm just using it here as an example because it's the first one I thought of. I'm hypothetically using this Red Heart Super Saver yarn in place of my Marvel 4 Seasons blue number 7, which is called Electric. In the empty column in the blue number 7 row, I would then put Red Heart Super Saver blue. That way I know that anytime I need to use blue number 7 yarn in the pattern, I'll be using the Red Heart Super Saver yarn called blue. As you saw in the second column, each colour has its own abbreviation, and this is what is going to appear in the written pattern. We're going to go over how to read those now. Each colour has its own alphabetical abbreviation. White, for example, is abbreviated to capital W. Black is abbreviated to capital B, L, K. Pink is abbreviated to capital P followed by a K, and so on. Due to the fact that we are using multiple shades for most of these colours, many of these alphabetical abbreviations are also followed by a number. For example, BL is for blue, so BL1 is blue number 1, BL7 is blue number 7, and so on. There is one exception to these abbreviations, and that is the background colour, abbreviated to capital B, capital G. The background colour can be any colour that you want it to be. I'll be crocheting my background in the shape of a Pokeball, specifically a Great Ball. So at various points, my background is going to be blue, black, and white. You can choose whatever colour you want to be your background colour, or you can follow along with what I'm doing. Just remember what colour you are using for your background, and in the particular square that you are crocheting, use that colour when you see the abbreviation BG. All the other colours follow the abbreviation rules that I've previously laid out. For the colours that have multiple shades, so blue for example, they are roughly in order from lightest to darkest. Blue number 1 being the lightest shade of blue, blue number 8 being the darkest shade. However, because I haven't crocheted all the squares yet, as I continue to do so, this order may change in some capacity. So if I need to swap colours out, I need to substitute colours in, etc. This may bugger up the order of lightest to darkest. This is the reason that I've included the reference column. Both the coloured squares which is column 1, and the name of the particular yarn that I'm using, which is column 3. So when you are substituting your yarn in, you'll have that visual aid. Though I'm going to do my best to keep them that way, please don't assume that the yarn colors are in order from lightest to darkest. Any changes that I do make in regards to the colors will be mentioned in the video itself, as well as written down in the description and the pinned comment. At that point, I will also be updating the color chart over on my Instagram feed. Now that we've covered what all of the abbreviations stand for, I want to discuss how to read the pattern itself. And to help with that, I'm going to put up on the screen a section of the Bulbasaur pattern, which is the first pattern that we're going to be crocheting in this series. Each row will start with your background color, abbreviated to capital B, capital G. Then you'll follow the pattern steps in order, working your way down from top to bottom. The last row of each square should also be crocheted in your background color. For row 17, we start with CH1, TW, 12SC. CH is the abbreviation for chain, TW stands for turn work, and SC is the abbreviation for single crochet. That means to begin row 17, we'll chain 1, turn our work, and crochet 12 single crochet. The next step reads CC, BLK, 1SC. CC is the abbreviation for change color, BLK is the abbreviation for black, and as mentioned before, SC is the abbreviation for single crochet. For this part of the pattern, we change color to our black yarn and crochet 1 single crochet with it. The next line reads CC, BL7, 2SC. Here we change color to blue number 7 and crochet with it for 2 single crochet. The next line is CC, BL5, 5SC. Change color to blue number 5 and crochet 5 single crochet. Keep following all the steps of the pattern down until you reach the bottom. Sometimes there will be notes at the end of the pattern. As you can see with row 17, the final line reads no longer need BL7. This means we will not be using blue number 7 anymore in this square. So when you've finished crocheting the final step, you can set this shade aside. Another thing to keep in mind, especially when we get to crocheting the squares for some of the larger Pokemon, is that the text for each row of the pattern may not all fit on the screen at once. If this is the case, the text will scroll up, so don't be concerned if you can't see all of the pattern initially. That's all the important stuff out of the way. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things before we finish up here. Number one concerns the written pattern and the grids. I do plan to have a written pattern for this blanket at some point, but it won't be until the actual blanket is finished, and I have no idea when that's going to be. And as for the grids, I do plan to release those on my Instagram page, but I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to do that individually or as a group. Let me know if you've made it this far in the video. Let me know which way you'd prefer down in the comments. But at the moment, I am leaning towards releasing them at the end of the month. So whichever patterns I've covered in that month, all of those grids will be released at the end of the month. The second and final thing concerns mistakes. There's going to be some. With a project of this scale, it's inevitable. I'm going to do my best to keep them to a minimum and fix any of the ones that I do find whilst editing. But again, because this project is so large and I am one person, mistakes are probably going to slip through the cracks. That being said, any mistakes that I do find will be in the pinned comment below the video. I might put them in the description as well. And if you do find any mistakes, please let me know what they are and where they are, and I will add those to the pinned comment. I really appreciate when you guys help me out with that sort of thing, so thanks in advance. And that is it for this video. The next video in the series will be the tutorial portion, as I mentioned before, and after that we will begin the patterns or the squares themselves. I plan to release one of these videos every 2 weeks. I'll be alternating with my regular patterns, but I would like to get to the stage where I can release at least one of these videos a week, possibly 2, but I think that might be pushing it a little bit. If you've stuck around this long, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, leave a like and a comment, share this video if you think it's worth sharing, and I will be back next week with a new pattern. I will see you all then.